All right, so we have 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. So, 6 o'clock, we'll call it. Roll call, we have 4 of us board members present, just missing Maggie and Cheryl. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So I move we approve agenda.
Second. Motion from Rick, second from Bruce. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carried. And go to new business, truth in taxation hearing.
Alright.
You're ready, Janelle?
Yep, we'll just turn it over to Steve Pumper, who is here with PMA Financial to review our truth in taxation information. Steve, thanks for joining us today. Your presentation is live and I see that on the screen, so I will let you just take it away.
Great, thanks everyone. Appreciate being here tonight. Just a reminder that there's roughly 330 districts in the state of Minnesota, and all of them have to go through the same exercise that you're going through tonight before you certify your levy that's payable in 2023. The requirements when you hold the hearing are you need to talk about your current school year budget. You need to talk about the proposed tax levy, which is actually for your next year's school budget. And then the final requirement is you need to allow any public who's in attendance to speak before the board takes action on certifying the levy. So we'll take care of all those 3 requirements tonight. The levy calendar just kind of shows you that there's a long process that goes into preparing all the information that goes into what Carrie's certainly familiar with, the 39-page document that MDE produces in September. But all that information is supplied starting back in June, including enrollment data, including debt data, and in your case, actually election data that would have taken place in November as well. And then in November, the county needs to mail out the proposed tax notices, which they would have done in your district. And then you're at the last bullet point tonight where you'll be certifying a levy that you'll give then to the county auditor when you take action. Everyone would have received a statement in your district that looks something like the attached. This is just a dummied up statement, but it will show you proposed taxes in 2023. And there's just a couple things I want to point out. On the statement, we'll show your valuation of the piece of property that you have and the classification that your property falls into. And that's probably more important this year than ever, as we'll talk about in a few slides down. And then your taxes will also show not just the school district portions of the taxes, but your city taxes and your county taxes as well. Obviously tonight, all the school district board members, all you have authority over is the school district portion of the taxes. So we'll go on the first requirement talking about your budget. You have 6 separate funds that you use. 3 of those have a tax levy component to that, and they're authorized. That's a general fund, the community service fund, and the debt service fund. So those are what we'll really be focusing on. But when we look at the budget that was approved by the school board back in June of 2022 for your current school year, 2022-23, you'll notice that the 6 different funds that you have a revenue component and an expense component. And you also notice that you're fairly balanced in almost all the funds, with the exception of the construction fund. And I think board members are familiar with this, but again, for any audience members, et cetera, the reason that your revenue is so out of balance from your expenses is because you sold bonds to pay for construction expenses. And all that revenue would have been received in a prior year. So the only thing that's really showing here for revenue in your fiscal year 23 budget is some interest earnings. But you still have a lot of construction that you were going to take care of. And so that's why that particular fund would be quote unquote out of balance in a given year. But all your other funds are pretty much, your revenues and expenses are fairly equal. When we look at your revenues by fund, you'll notice that your general fund has certainly the highest percentage of all the revenues that come in. And the general fund is what I think most people would associate with running a pre-K 12 school building, which would include all your teachers, your custodians, your administrators, your paras, your bus drivers, your transportation costs, your utility costs, your books, your curriculum, pretty much everything associated with that. So the lion's share of your revenue comes to support that piece. Your next largest piece for your district is your debt service, and that's really typical for all districts, and that's to fund debt service payments that you have outstanding for construction projects that you've done. Again, very, very typical for districts across the state. The revenues by source are interesting because here we're talking about the property taxes that you're going to levy, but that only represents 19% of the total district's revenue budget. So the lion's share is still coming in through the state at 61%, and then you have federal aid at 11% as the next highest. This is very close to what you had last year. Your property taxes represented 19% last year as well. The major difference, which wasn't that major, but was last year you had 13% of your budget coming in from federal aid, and that was mostly because of COVID-related revenues that were generated. When we look at expenditures by fund, again, we're kind of mirroring what happens. 74% of all your expenditures are spent on the general fund. Again, followed next closest by your construction fund in this case, because you have $1.5 million left of construction to do, and then your debt service fund as well. When we focus strictly on the general fund as expenditures as are categorized by the state, and again, you don't have, or Carrie doesn't have any say over this. This is just how the state has it set up. We show how your expenditures are spent. And if I start here with elementary and secondary regular instruction, I kind of work my way around to the left, and I include all the expenditures that would be direct classroom expenditures. That totals 64%. So 64% of your entire general fund budget is going directly into the classroom, and the remaining is for pupil support or utilities and other things as well, transportation. Here's a nice slide to show you, and hopefully board members were made aware of this when you actually sold your bonds recently. You were upgraded from from an A1 rating to a AA3 rating. That happened back in March of this past calendar year. So that's a great sign that an independent source, in this case Moody's, when they looked at your financial statements and all of your policies that you have in place and your debt management, et cetera, they said that, hey, you're doing a great job and we're going to upgrade you as well. And that certainly helps in lowering interest rates on any debt that you sell. So it's a great feather in your hat, but it's also that your local taxpayers realize the benefit of this because they're going to pay less interest on your outstanding debt. Now we're going to shift to our second requirement, and that is going over your proposed levy. And again, as I mentioned, there's 3 different funds that have a levy component. This first one is a general fund. I'll go to the bottom first, and I'll come back up there in a minute. So last year you levied $1,585,000. This year you're planning on levying $1,968,000, which is an increase of $382,000 or a 24% increase, which sounds like a larger increase. But the reason for that is you went to your voters and they said, okay, we agree that we will raise our operating referendum. Sorry, I'm just getting to my notes. From what was $39.25 to $460. And that generated this $458,000 worth of levy, or this increase of $421,000. So without your voter approval, your levy would have actually gone down. But you went to the voters and asked, hey, are you okay with this? And they said yes. And so that's why your levy is going up in the general fund. When we look at your community service fund, you'll see that it's almost the same levy as it was last year, just an increase of $564 or just over 0.5%, a very small fund for your district. And then on your debt service, you'll notice that that's going up $77,000 or 6.24%. And that's a function of what your debt service payments look like over time and how that's structured. So when we look at your total levy, it's going up $461,064 or a 15.79% increase overall. So some of the major changes on that, I talked about this one already. Your voter approved referendum is the lion's share of that increase, $421,000. Your capital projects referendum, which you already had in place, is going up by $14,596. And that's really due to the increase in net tax capacity. The difference between your operating referendum, that's based on how many students you have. Your capital projects referendum is based on a percentage of your net tax capacity. And net tax capacity is kind of a fancy word for what is the wealth of all the properties or the value of all the properties in your entire district, whether that's commercial or residential or agricultural land, et cetera. And we look at that and you say you're going to collect a tax rate on that. And if the value of all your properties goes up, that means you get more dollars. And that's what's happening in this case. You also had a $4,000 increase in reemployment, which was a post-COVID adjustment. And then a decrease in your long-term facility maintenance, which really doesn't mean that you're going to collect less money. It's just shifting it from your general fund over to your debt service fund. That's just kind of how it's a shell game a little bit, how that works as well. More changes. You have your voter approved debt service. Again, it went up 35,000. That's just because of how your debt service schedules work. This is, again, the corresponding shift from your general fund over to debt service for your long-term facility maintenance. And then the last two lines are $12,360 debt excess adjustment, which is a negative. And again, just to educate board members, when you levy for your principal and interest payments on outstanding debt, you are required by law to levy 105% of the total that is due. And the reason the state forces districts to do that is in case you don't collect 100% of all the taxes, because everybody doesn't always pay their taxes on time. You have the ability to make your debt service payments. So what the state does, though, is if you're continuing levying 5% extra, at some point in time, you have to give that money back. And it's kind of a 3-year rolling average to give that money back. And so in this case, you're giving $12,000 back to your taxpayers for that additional 5% that you've been collecting over time. Then the last piece is prior year adjustments of roughly $24,000. All of your, or most of your levy components are based on estimates. Your most significant estimate is student enrollment. So, when Carrie and Janelle put together this information, what's our enrollment going to be next year? And they kind of guess at that. And then you go back and correct those for actuals on future levies. And so that's what's happening there. So as I mentioned, your total levy is increasing by 15.79%. But your referendum market value, your net tax capacities are increasing by close to 20% each. So again, the values of all the properties in your district are going up roughly 20%. However, it's not going up evenly 20%. And what I'm going to show you here is that I'm looking at a home. Last year, that would have been valued at $100,000. It's likely going to go up 20% on average. Now, again, every individual property would be different. So that home last year that was valued at $100,000 is now valued at $120,000. However, when I look at commercial and industrial piece of property, that's more likely to go only up by 5%. So if you had a piece of commercial industrial property at $100,000 last year, now it would be valued at $105,000. And so what that really means is as you are collecting the total dollars that you are due for school district taxes, the shift is going more to residential homestead because the value of all the residential homestead has gone up significantly higher than the value of commercial and industrial property. So as an entirety, all the residential homesteads are paying a bigger piece of the pie than commercial and industrial. So we'll see that, if I just take an average home here of $200,000 and it's increased in value by 20%, it's now at $240,000. They would have paid $666 last year. They'd be paying $840 this year, so an increase of $173. So other factors that may affect your tax statement, again, I just was talking about the increase in valuation, and I've already mentioned too that on your tax statement, remember there's also city taxes that you're paying and county taxes that you're paying as well. This is just a reference for you. And I know sometimes the district posts this online. So if property tax owners want to go to this website, the state of Minnesota has, these 6 different programs that you may be eligible to get some property tax relief on. And so that's just kind of a resource for your property tax owners if they want to look at that. Now some more detailed information for your district. When we look at an average size home in your district, it's valued at $275,000. These are the components that make up the $972 of school district taxes this home would pay for next year. So $187 of that is based on the voter approved referendum. So what the voters just approved in this November, that represents $187. $301 represents the board-approved referendum and the local optional equity and transition revenues. 355 of that total represents the voter-approved bonds that have been passed for construction projects. $12 represents the board-approved debt, and that's for your long-term facility maintenance debt. And then 118 represents kind of the catch-all for everything else, including your community service and other components within your general fund. So if I look at both of these, we're talking over $500, so over half of the total district taxes that are being paid have been approved by your voters. You've gone to the voters and you've asked for the approval, and they said yes. So it's kind of give you a little look there. If I look at the tax levy trend over time, these are the actual dollars that the district has levied over the last 8-year period of time. We're including this coming year. And you'll see the jump to the 3.3. And again, that's because you went to your voters for the operating referendum. And then here is a vote when you went to the districts to ask for construction projects. So you can kind of see the trend of what's happened over time. And then here's your valuation trend that I spoke about your big increase in 20% that you're seeing for taxes payable in 2023 on the home values or the wealth within your district on property values. So you can see that you normally have been around this, 5%, 3 to 5% valuation increase, which is pretty typical across the state. And then everybody in the state, not just Paynesville, is getting hit. I don't know if that's hit's the right word, but the valuations are increasing statewide by over 20% on residential home values. And you can see that. So this is certainly an anomaly, not what we would typically see. Matter of fact, back in 2017, you actually saw some values actually decreasing back then. So when we look at a $275,000 home, what this chart represents, if I'm looking back 7 years on that, the home would have been valued at something less than $275,000. And so I'm increasing that by 4% each year until I get to pay 23 when I'm increasing it by 20%. So kind of backing up, if you're in a home that's valued at $275,000 now, it would have been valued at something much less back in 2016. But if I was in that same home, I was probably paying $572 of school district taxes. And you could see my increases when the voters approved your bonds. And then you could see my increase when the voters approved your operating referendum. The same is true for, this is the same type of chart for agricultural land. The big difference here is you'll see all these decreases. And the reason that you're having these significant decreases is twofold. One is because of the Ag to School credit. And that started out at a 40% credit. And it's gone all the way up to taxes payable in 2023, now to a 70% tax credit. And that's where the legislature has it stopping right now. And we'll see if they take additional action to increase that coming up or not. But the other reason is that you also see that they don't have this increase in 2023 like the residential pieces of property have, because they are not paying taxes on your operating referendum. Ag land is excluded from that. The house, garage, and 1 acre pay it like a residential home does, but the ag land itself does not pay it. So that's why you're not seeing that corresponding increase. So obviously big decreases for ag land. Which brings me to what the board should be taking action on tonight. You need to, when you certified a preliminary levy, you certified a mechanism calling you're certifying the maximum. But tonight you have to actually certify something to the penny. And so the proposal that administration has put forward on your board agenda is to certify a number of $3,381,808.60. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you to open it up for public comments, and I'll stay to answer any questions you might have.
Is it right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just couldn't.
I don't have the gun.
2,381,816.
Oh, perfect.
I double checked that too when we had the number up.
Our only public. Yeah. This is being recorded.
All right.
Recorded, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
All right, with that, I don't hear any public comments or questions. So we will turn it back to us and, we have a recommendation from the superintendent to approve the payable 2023 levy as $3,381,808.60 as presented. Looking for a motion to approve.
So move.
Motion from Bruce,
Second.
second from Rick. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Carried. And then now we're just looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move the board to now adjourn.
Motion from Jake,
I'll second.
second from Bruce. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried.